See your screen. Okay. Welcome back. I hope everyone had good food, some chicken, some vegetarian sandwiches, and everyone's glucose reading would be high. So good. Okay. In so yeah. So today, I mean, now I'll talk little. So previously we talked about physiological. Do you want to sit over there on that seat? Be easier. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we learned what is physiology and how, like, when how stimulus sort of affect our physiology, including food, including stressful events, including, yeah, any other visual or auditory stimuli. So now in this session, I'll sort of share a little bit about how I've used physiological signals to adapt the systems and what are the challenges and design guidelines came through the research. So first, let me advertise the model. So yeah, this is one of the VR headsets with again just reflecting back on the signals we physiological signals we talked about. So we have EEG, we have electrodermal activity, PPG, EMG, and EOG. So this is a VR headset that we had access to, and we ran some studies, data collection studies using that. And that's Tamil, the model over there. You can also see could be me in my young days. So so yeah, we learned that physiological signals are continuous, multi-layered, and context-dependent. And challenges that we faced while designing bioresponsive design, yeah, is signal ambiguity. So signals are different signals have, I mean, same signals have different meanings, so not necessary every time it matches the same meaning for the signal. And then baseline also differs from you person to person, so a male of a particular age versus a male of a different age versus a female of a certain age. Everyone will have their own baseline physiology which is different. Then some signals react instantly, others slowly. So, for example, heart rate variability sort of, it triggers or it reacts as soon as you see the stimulus, whereas electrodermal activity is a slow changing signal. So it takes some time, and then you have to observe other parameters of the electrodermal activity. And then, yeah, and users infer system intent is also challenging. So when we train a model or when we, let's say, design a system to understand emotion or cognition, then we ask users to rate their emotional state or cognitive load. So sometimes that also comes with a bias in labeling. So when we collect the raw data, so previous I showed what physiological signals are there and then what devices you can use to collect. But when we collected the data, after that, so there is like the three layer of interpretation. So where we first collect the raw data, including amplitude, frequency, variability, baseline, deviation, etc. And then from there, we take to the next level, which is temporal patterning and understanding the trends over time, persistence, recovery, coupling. So we use like time sliding window techniques or other techniques to sort of uh, understand these temporal patterns. And then third is contextual embedding, so understanding the environmental setting or whatever the context where this particular event is happening, and using those contexts to interpret is also useful. So through in my research, I usually use this structure or architecture of a bioresponsive system, where you first collect the physiological data, then you pre-process and extract the features, and then the temporal modeling, then interpretation layer, as I suggested earlier. So as an output of interpretation layer, you might get either, let's say, stress or emotional states or cognitive load or any other psychophysiological concepts that you are using the physiology for. And then once you have that information, then you use it to map your interactions. So depending on your applications, if it's around social anxiety, then you understand the anxiousness of the person and then you map the interaction. So it could be anything related to maybe environment, and maybe it could be related to the person who's standing next to you, or the proximity between two people. So any adaptation strategy that you wanna follow based on the physiological inferences that comes over then, and then you modulate the system based on that, and then user perceive how it happens, and then we get the feedback, and then it's a feedback loop to sort of keep adapting the interface. But be careful. So data, like physiological data is most of the time noisy. So having a good sort of motion artifact removal system or algorithm is important. And especially, okay, so one example when Vision will show her system, the chopstick. So when we put a fingertip to get the heart rate variability, the contact of with the fingertip and the sensor is also important. So when you move your hand, we have to make sure that the hand or the finger is completely stuck, or the sensor is in contact with the device, and less motion artifacts or less contact issues to remove the noise. And then inference is misclassification. So sometimes people think that, okay, I'm feeling happy at this time, or 1 to 7 I feel six happy, or six pleasant or unpleasant, and then every user will have their own inferences. So also sometimes when we, let's say, design a emotion recognition system to detect happy, sad, excitement, etc., but sometimes it also miscalculate and misclassify. Then latency is also an issue. So having synchronized, if you're using multi-modal sensors, then synchronizing all the systems in one timestamp, and then the latency between, like, technological latency, internet speed, or if there are any other radio inferences. And then overfitting is also a problem. So whoever works in machine learning, they know the overfitting problem. So if you don't have a balanced data set, that sort of leads to overfitting. Then misaligned mapping. So when we think about the mapping strategy, we have to consider the user's mental model into consideration. And if the mental model is not aligned with the mapping, the adaptation you want to do, then the user will have either a bad experience or something like a non-authentic experience. And then understanding, yeah, the ethical and cultural part is also important, and sometimes that also misinterprets. One of the example is, the PPG data is a PPG sensor is very sensitive to the skin color, skin tone. So there are researches which says that for brown color, the PPG data would be different. For any other skin tone, the data would be different. And sometimes it's not reliable as well based on the algorithms that we use. So be careful about that. So now I'll show you a few examples of the work I have done, small projects during my PhD and after the PhD. So just to give you an idea how we use physiology for what particular purpose. So this is an example of a emotion adaptive system. Yep. So user starts the forbidden. So it's just a virtual reality environment where we understand the emotional states. So basically physiology, EEG, electrodermal activity. We train some models to understand. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So basically we triggered the unpleasant experience, and or when we detected the unpleasant experience, or yeah, basically to customize the experience, we changed the distortion to and the fog density and the audio and all that. So these were the basic kind of adaptations that we tried based on the emotional state. And this was, I think, 2019 project. And then if you see on the left, there's a meter, kind of like a mood meter, or like your phobia meter, how anxious you are. It was a scary experience. Okay, moving. So we were adapting basically yeah. So this will go on. Basically, the idea was for the user to have an adaptive experience, but because like when, so for example, I don't play games, but if I play a horror game, I'll be more scared. Whereas Pi play a lot of horror games, so for him playing this game is boring. So what if we understand and adapt the environment in simple terms? That was actually the motivation at that time. So next, okay, so this is another work I did when I was in university, when I was in Germany and collaborated with researchers from Augsburg. So we tried to look how, okay, this was again during COVID time when, and when social distancing, you can't go out. So you have, and especially musicians, they can't play with each other, and especially who jam. So we sort of thought, okay, what about we build a mixed reality system with physiological signals, and share them, give a real time musical experience, and then understand the flow experience. So this is where we use physiology to understand the flow. And it should look, How much time left? Yeah. So, I mean, over here we were just measuring the physiology and having the point cloud there. But then the idea was, the more we understand the people are in flow, the better they can see themselves in the visualization. Otherwise, it can be just an abstract, right? So these kind of, you can use flow or other information to sort of adapt the environment in, especially in the remote collaboration way, to or synchrony, to sort of use in a more adaptive. Yeah. Yeah. You said like logical data over. Sorry, say again. Clouds. Did you send this physiological data over the cloud? These in this project, uh, like for the real time physiological data, like feedback to each other, right? Yeah. So right now this was just live playing, and we were monitoring the physiology, and then we were understanding the flow state. Yeah. I mean, yeah. But we were not sending the data to the cloud because it was set up in the next rooms. So see, because one of the problem with cloud and having this kind of experiences, there's a lot of latency. So we found a hack because we wanted to just understand the research part of it. So we just put them in two different rooms, same LAN, etc. But physiology wise, it showed some significant effects. Then this is another example of the. Yeah. So this is another example of the project we did, where we understood the cognitive load and emotional state and cognitive fatigue to adapt the environment in a cognitive rehabilitation scenario. Something. Sweet. Let me see. But yeah, so so over here we use the physiologic. Okay, the scenario over here was a cognitive rehabilitation for patients who are getting better, or getting on their feet. after traumatic brain injury. So over here, we were understanding the cognitive model and how what kind of activities in a cafe scenario sort of elicit or had more cognitive processing, and we adapt. So we adapt the difficulty level or the audio or the visual based on the people's real-time cognitive load to optimize the experience. So these were the three examples I had. Um, and I think we are short on time. So probably I'll just go to the design guidelines that I sort of put together from my experience. So yeah, signals are first design for trends and not only for the state. Yeah, I mean we can design, let's say, for yeah. So physiological signals fluctuate. They are noisy and context sensitive. Heart rate variability, electrodermal activity, everything fluctuate moment to moment. So that's why emotion and cognitive load and yeah, and they correlate with sustained activation. So electrodermal activity and heart rate variability both suggest activation. So just make sure don't look at the peak, but try to understand the trend or the emotion or whatever is happening throughout the signals. And sustained arousal prediction also provides meaningful shifts. And yeah, then next guideline is preserve ambiguity. So physiological signals are many to one mapping. So you can't have just one signal telling one thing. You have to have multiple signals to infer something, and then try to understand what's happening. For example, high arousal is not always stress, it could be excitement as well. So when our heart rate is, I'm in the let's say I'm my heart rate is high, and whereas the system will understand that I'm stressed, but I'm just walking on a treadmill or going for a walk. So that's why understanding the context and which physiology is also important. Then construct validity also remains debated in affective computing. So having a common or a reliable sort of term for emotion or a framework for emotion, cognitive load, and all these things is also not there. So there's no standardized thing. And then so labeling, when you label the emotional state or cognitive load or whatever you want to label for the physiological data, sometimes people are overconfident or not sure, so that also brings a bias into the interpretation. And then interpreting use machine learning or other deep learning kind of algorithms to understand emotional cognition and respond subtly. Then another guideline is modulate peripherally. So whatever is in front of them, avoid making that uh, change right at that time, but something in their periphery. So it avoid like their disruption, and then adapt ambiently, and then support regulation quietly. Yeah. Then calibrate individually. So everyone have different physiology, so it's important, once you build the model, it's important to calibrate first and then start using it, because there is no universal baseline, and every individual has to learn. Physiology has to be learned for individual, and then adaptation over time. Then next, respect user agency. So again, when you adapt, it shouldn't be to fool the people, to deceive the people or user, or to manipulate the user in something that they don't want. At least give them option. At least give them option. And yeah, offer transparency and allow override. Let the user decide. Choose finally. And then expect misinterpretation. So even though our machine learning model are 100% accurate on paper, but when you go and try it in the wild, it never works as intended. So that's why have some scope of error interpretation, have some error handling, your dialogues or interactions or interfaces. And then models are imperfect, so make them so that they learn over the time, and then design for failure. Thank you. Any question?
Yeah, so we still have 7 minutes for the next speaker, so we could have the QA around 7 minutes. I mean,
Anyone have questions?
When you have like, can we show the I guess the horror VR experience or something like. So red bar was like the heart rate variability, or is it just?
So so that was in 2019 when I was very new to physiology. So
Yeah.
we were trying the threshold part of it. So we had a user trying out different scenarios. So we had like a low, medium, and high. So that was a sanity meter. I just called it as a sanity meter, but more like anxiety meter.
Yeah.
So try to understand the activation level of the body.
Yeah, and then that worked. So that basically tells you how scary
I mean, so see, because the scenario was scary, so that's why we labeled it as scary, but it could be exciting as well.
Yeah.
Whereas wherever your body activation is higher, like
Yeah.
the physiological activation. Yeah. Yes.
I just want to share my
Yes, please.
discontentment.
Yes, please.
With you saying, with you being against tricking the users. Because I do believe that that has a lot of potential to create other situations. For example, horror games, they do that a lot to trick you that you're more nervous than you are. For example, putting sounds of heartbeats is a lot about making you believe that that is your heartbeat. That's like a new truth.
Okay, so when I say don't deceive the user, so yeah, these are the experimental things we have to try to manipulate to physiology. But when I say manipulation or deception, that means when you say that you tick mark on this to not share your personal information, but you tick it's still you share the data, whatever. So in that way, give the user agency. When we design the system, maybe check with them, if the manipulation is for the betterment of for the user, and if they know that's happening with them, or they have an option to turn it off. Again, user agency. Designers can do whatever they want, seriously, but users are important sometimes. I mean, most of the time, actually every time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember that. Yes.
Any other, yeah, maybe. See, that's why experiment. You can do as much experiment you want when it goes to user. Yes. Yeah.
Just wondering, so I thought the guitar experience was really interesting.
Mhm.
So how do you so what kind of data do you use to synchronize like flow states?
So see, I mean, trick them.
3 hours now.
Yeah, trick the user. No, so see, again, this is just one example that I showed you. So where we were using heart rate variability as a measure to understand the synchrony. But we did another project where with Pi, I think first year we used EEG. So where we use the PLV, like phase locking value as a synchrony measure. So different things, different measure. But yeah, from the paper, we found that heart rate variability has some features which shows the flow state. So when you are in the flow state, and then it's an inverted U curve, I think.
And
Yeah.
does the position of the the sensor affects data you get from
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
sensor as well?
Yeah, so every sensor has its own value, so has its own position to put. So for example, electrodermal activity. So best are these. Okay, so electrodermal activity is your skin sweat palm, so you go to the stage and say, I'm getting stage fright and my sweats are palm, like my palms are sweaty. So that phenomena actually happens. So this is the position, ideal position for electrodermal activity. PPG, this works over here, earlobe works, right? But for electrodermal activity, this area works, but maybe this doesn't work. So it depends on where your sweat glands are, and other things. So yeah, positioning, like position of the electrodes matter. Yes.
I'm wondering, generally, how many signals you use to infer one emotion states?
Wow. Okay. So like which emotion state? Like
Like
just
happy
valence
or-
arousal? Okay. So our approach is we started with kitchen sink. So whatever we have, we put we stimulus and we see what changes. But from there we got to know that EEG works well, electrodermal activity and heart rate variability combination and pupil. So right now we just put all these and then identify which features are more contributing in this particular model, and then we just go with that because that also changes.
Is there any forms to suggest how many signals you use?
No.
Just
No. But see, like heart rate variability and electrodermal activity sort of gives you an activation level, right? Pupil diameter also gives you an activation level, pupil diameter and all that.
Yeah.
So if you are just looking for activation level, you can just use 1 or 2 signals would work. But if you are looking to, let's say, pleasant or unpleasant or any other thing or any other neuro phenomena, then you put EEG and try to understand whether your visual or your visual cortex or your occipital or your prefrontal, whichever was activating. So that sort of tells you about your meditation level, concentration level, problem solving, brain engagement. So this comes from here. So depending on the application and your base. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.